Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing one of my favorite tag videos to do every single year, and that is the mid-year book freakout tag. Obviously today I am also being joined by a guest. This is my cat Winnie. She's so chill right now. This is not what she's usually like. But anyway, since it is officially July, meaning we have made it through 6 months of 2024 so far, which is honestly insane to think about. What a better time to do this tag, reflect on my reading year so far, talk about my favorites, least favorites, just some, where are you going? Just some good books. So that's what we're going to be doing today, so let's just get into it because there are quite a few questions. Also, for a lot of these questions, I do have multiple books, even though I think you're really only supposed to choose one, but like, I'm so indecisive, so I just have multiple sometimes, but that's okay. So the first question is, what is the best book that you've read this year? And I do have 3 books that I quickly want to talk about. I think I'll save like my favorite for last, but we'll talk about the other 2 first. The first one being The Invocations by Are you leaving? Ooh. All right. The first one being The Invocations by Crystal Sutherland. This is a YA horror novel that I just absolutely fell in love with back in April. This is following 3 girls that are all involved with witchcraft in some way, and I just loved the way that their stories were woven together. I also just absolutely adore Crystal Sutherland's writing style. It is so atmospheric and spooky, and it was honestly exactly what I was looking for in the beginning of April, because I was kind of missing Halloween and fall a little bit, even though I know that's a little bit crazy, but this did fulfill what I was really needing in that time. So I just loved the story, I loved the characters, I loved kind of the conclusion to everything, and this book just really took me by surprise. I was expecting to enjoy it because I also really enjoyed House of Hollow by Crystal Sutherland, but this one was just like my favorite. It also took place in like late October, early November, which is like my favorite time of year for books to be set in. So it kind of just ticked all of the boxes. Then we have a recent read, which I'm so excited that I ended up really liking this one, and that is Yumi and the Nightmare Painter by Brandon Sanderson. This was one of his secret projects that he released last year, and I've been so highly anticipating getting to this book. I have been slowly making my way through the Cosmere since the beginning of about last year is really when I committed to reading all of the books in the Cosmere, and I'm so happy that I was finally able to read this one because I wanted to save this for a little bit later in my, you know, like Cosmere reading journey, shall we say. You're following our 2 main characters, Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, and they are from different worlds, and you're kind of seeing how their worlds are now overlapping, how their lives are becoming intertwined in a very confusing and mysterious way that they don't fully understand. But I just loved the characters. I also loved the world that this was set on because it feels very different from other Brandon Sanderson worlds, and I thought it was really cool to see him do something a little bit different. And I also thought the magic system was really cool as well. Just everything about this book was so enjoyable. I think I read it in a span of like 24 hours because I needed to kind of see what the conclusion to this story was, and it was so lovely. I also really enjoyed the romance. I thought it was fun. It's not like the best romance, but I think for a Brandon Sanderson book, this is definitely one of my favorite like couples that he's had. So this one also just checked a lot of boxes for me, and I cannot wait to reread this at some point because I definitely want to. And then the final book for this question is the book that I probably would have predicted was going to be my answer for this question at the beginning of the year, and that is an incredibly fulfilling feeling, let me tell you. Because probably in my top #1 book of the year so far is Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands by Heather Fawcett. I read the first book in this series early last year. I really liked it, but it wasn't like a top favorite book of all time. I was kind of teetering between like a 4.5 and a 5 with that one, but oh my god, I picked this one up and it was so good. I just love these characters so much. I also loved the setting of this one because I believe it takes place in Austria, and they're kind of like in the Alps or near the Alps, and I want to visit the Alps so badly. Like, that is one of my top travel destinations, just to see the Alps in literally any country because I love mountains. So the fact that this one, like, they were going up into the mountains a little bit, I just thought that was so fun and kind of like exactly what I wanted. I also love the romance between Emily and Wendell. They are just so cute. The romance is so wholesome. And I also just love Heather Fawcett's depiction of the Fae because so many of them are just super evil and conniving and just absolutely hideous, and I love it when fairies are like depicted that way. And kind of seeing Emily's interaction with the folk is also just really entertaining. I just absolutely adore this series so much. Also, we do quickly need to talk about it because the UK cover for the 3rd book was revealed earlier this week, and it is so beautiful. I love the pink. I love the illustrations. I just love the UK covers for this series so much. They're some of my favorite book covers, and they're also some of my favorite books. So I just feel really passionate about this series series. It's one of my absolute new favorites. Like, it's been cemented as a new favorite series with this installment. Also, actually, one last thing that I forgot to say is that this book is incredibly autumnal, which again, I was reading this book in like February, and like maybe that's not what I needed at that time, but it's what I wanted at that time. So it was kind of perfect, and I definitely want to reread the series in the fall at some point, not this year, but like maybe in a few years I will reread it in the fall because I think it's a very wintry fall series so far. I don't know when the third book is set, but you know, I'm gonna stop rambling about it. I've said too much already. The next question is the best sequel that I've read so far this year, and this one is just an extension of the first question because this is also like one of my new favorite books of the year. This is probably number 2. It's probably like Emily Wilde's and then this book, because A Grave Robbery by Deanna Raybourn was honestly everything I needed it to be and everything I wanted it to be. I feel like as the series has progressed, there have been some installments that I haven't enjoyed quite as much as the earlier ones. Don't get me wrong, all of the books are great. This is absolutely one of my favorite series, but like it does have its ups and downs. But A Grave Robbery was definitely a highlight of the series for me. And I think the main reason for that is how horror leaning this book is. Obviously it's not horror, this is like a historical romance mystery kind of series, but the mystery in this one was so creepy because our main characters get this wax figure that somebody wants them to like fit a mechanism in that makes it look like the wax figure is breathing. But when they get the wax figure and they cut it open, they realize, oh, this is like an actual dead woman. So like obviously they're trying to figure out what the hell happened there. The setup is just so grotesque and disgusting, honestly, but that led to a very like kind of creepy and spooky story. They were in a graveyard for a while, hence the cover of it, and just everything about this book was everything I needed it to be because I love the historical romance mystery kind of thing, but I also love spooky books. So this kind of like merging my two worlds there. Also, there were so many good interactions between Veronica and Stoker, who are the main characters of this series. They're so stunning. I love them so much. There were so many, every time they have a moment with each other when they're like declaring their feelings for each other or whatever, I always eat it up. Every time I eat it up. And this one was just absolutely, I feel like I say the word stunning about everything, but it was stunning. Like literally in the vlog, I couldn't even speak about it. I was like, he did not just say that. I'm getting giddy just thinking about it now. Like I love Veronica and Stoker so much. But the next question is, what are your biggest disappointments of the year? And I do have quite a few. Unfortunately, like I'm really sad about it, but I feel like there have definitely been some books this year that I thought I was going to absolutely love, and I just absolutely did not. The first one being a book that I read very recently, and that was Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood. I have no words to describe how deeply disappointed in this book I was. I read the author's note at the beginning and I understand what this book is, like why I don't enjoy it, because Ali Hazelwood said in the author's note in the beginning to think of it as less of a rom-com and more of an erotic romance. And like, I do not want an erotic romance from Ali Hazelwood. Like, it was fine. It was so fine, but it was just so average, and I didn't find myself caring about what was happening in the slightest in the romance at any point in time in this book. And it kills me because Love Theoretically was one of my favorite books of last year, so I was like, all right, maybe I do really like Ali Hazelwood books. But I feel like the last 3 books that I've read from her, like her 3 most recent releases, like Check and Mate, Bride, and this one, I haven't really enjoyed any of them like that much. Like for what it is, Bride was fun, it's just not a favorite, but like Check and Mate and this one just have not been my favorite. So I will probably continue to pick up Ali Hazelwood books, but maybe I'll borrow them from the library and like see if I like them before I buy a copy of them. Then also Fate, Ink, and Blood by Danielle L. Jensen. I'm also really disappointed in this one because I really loved The Bridge Kingdom by her. I read that one 3 years ago, maybe? Or maybe it was 2 years ago, but I just really loved that book, and this one started out so well, and then I feel like the second half fell so heavily into the very typical fantasy romance formula, and I was like, sometimes I like it, sometimes I really don't like it, and I just hated it in this book for whatever reason. The ending of it really let me down. I think I've decided I'm probably not going to continue with the series, even though I really do enjoy the concept of a Norse-inspired fantasy romance, but I just had a lot of issues with it, so I probably won't continue with that one. The next question is, what is a new release that you haven't read yet? I do have, I think, only 2 that I want to talk about because I've been doing a pretty decent job at picking up the new releases that I wanted to read this year. The first one being Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. I don't typically read reach for thrillers. They're not normally my favorite genre. I don't really find them to be that satisfying, like when I finish them most of the time. But I have found that I do enjoy Riley Sager's books, so I definitely want to pick this one up in a few weeks. I think it came out last week maybe, but I'm gonna read it for Summerween, which I'm quite excited about. And then this next one is the one that I'm the most excited about because A Novel Love Story by Ashley Poston literally sounds like a book that was made for me. And probably every other reader on the planet, but like, you know what I mean. I really enjoy Ashley Poston's 2 other romance books that I read earlier this year, so I've been highly anticipating this one and I want to read it ASAP. The next question is what are my most anticipated releases for the rest of the year, and I think I have 3 that I'm like really excited about. The first one being Graveyard Shift by M.L. Rio. I read If We Were Villains last year. It took me completely by surprise, but I absolutely loved that book. So when I heard that she had a new like novella coming out in late September, I was so excited. And I'm still so excited. I cannot wait for this book because I love anything that takes place in a graveyard, and I also love M.L. Rio's writing, so I'm like, this is perfect. Then we have A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping by Sengu Mandana. This is the same author that wrote The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, which I read last year, and I absolutely adored it. It was so just cozy and fun, and this one also sounds cozy and fun, so I can't wait. And then the last one is definitely the one that I'm the most excited about out of these 3 because Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson comes out in early December. This is Stormlight Book 5. This is the conclusion to the very first arc of Stormlight Archive, and I'm scared. I'm so scared, but I'm so excited because I caught up with Stormlight earlier this year, and I've just been waiting for this book because I'm gonna say again, I'm just scared. The next question is what is your biggest surprise of the year? And I think you probably all know what I'm about to say because I've been talking about this series so much recently, and that is Mistborn Era 2 by Brandon Sanderson. Initially, I wasn't gonna read Mistborn Era 2 because I had a completely incorrect assumption as to what it actually was about. Because I thought this was very Wild West vibes, and I was like, I don't know about that. But like, it's really not. I feel like our characters kind of had their Wild West moment before the events of this series, but this series is just very much not that. So that's my own fault for assuming, but I also feel like I never really hear people say super great things about Era 2. So going into it, my expectations were just on the floor, honestly, but when I got into it and I started really loving it, I was like, hold on now? It's so good. This is following a cast of like 4 characters who in the beginning I was like, I don't know if I really enjoy any of you. But by the end I was like, wait, I love them all so much. This is just such a fun cast of characters. I also feel like this series has a great balance of like plot, action, character work, politics, all that kind of stuff that I want from Brandon Sanderson. I also love the Mistborn magic system, so kind of seeing how that has evolved since the events of the first era of Mistborn, it was really cool to see that as well. Then the other book that definitely took me by surprise was actually Persuasion by Jane Austen. I also found this really pretty cloth-bound version of it on Pengo a few weeks ago. And this one is mainly a surprise because I started reading Persuasion a couple of years ago and I put it down after page like 80 or something because I was like, dear God, this is boring. So I picked it up again and I didn't have high hopes, but I wanted to read a classic and I wanted one that wasn't too long. And I just feel like I've thought about this book a lot since I finished reading it. I loved this kind of second chance romance with Anne and Captain Wentworth. I thought they were so cute. And he writes her the most stunning letter at the end of this book that I do think about frequently because God, if somebody ever wrote me that letter, it'd be over. But I also just really loved Jane Austen's writing in this book. I loved the obvious social commentary in it. I always loved learning about what society was like in this time period. I think that's really fun. So Persuasion is probably one of my new favorite classics, honestly, which is kind of crazy because I went into it with low expectations. Maybe I just need to go into everything with low expectations and like my mind will be blown every time I read a book. So the next question is, who is my new favorite author? Now, I don't really know if I have a new favorite author, honestly. I feel like I haven't read enough books from any singular author to really like make that assertion. So I'm just gonna kind of tweak this question a little bit to be who is my favorite author of the year so far, whether that be an author that I've read from before or not. And I feel like my answer is gonna come as a surprise to nobody because I'm probably gonna choose Brandon Sanderson. I think I've read 10 books from him so far this year, which makes up like 16% of my reading so far, which is quite large, but I just absolutely love his stories. So I feel like maybe it's a cop-out, but I'm gonna choose Brandon Sanderson, even though I'm pretty sure I also chose him last year too, but what can you do? The next question is, who is my new favorite character? And this one I was also kind of having some trouble thinking of because there wasn't really one character that sprang to mind at first. But then it became very clear to me very quickly because there is definitely one character that I have mentioned in quite a few videos so far this year, and that is absolutely Steris from Mistborn Era 2. Again, I'm talking about Mistborn Era 2. It's fine. But I just absolutely love Steris so much. I feel like I see a lot of myself in her, which is probably why I like her as a character so much, because I can relate to her on so many levels. I feel like in the beginning of the series, I didn't really think much of her because we didn't really get a lot of her, but in book 3 and 4, she kind of becomes more of a central character. But the more you get to learn about her and the more you get to see her as a central character, the more I just absolutely loved and respected Steris. So it has to be her. It absolutely has to be her. The next question is a book that made you cry. Now, typically I'm not a book crier. I don't really get like, I get emotionally invested in them, but not like quite to the extent that I actually cry. But that's not the case with all media. Like, I've literally cried 3 times this week watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine of all things. But like, when it comes to books, I just don't typically cry. But if there's any book that definitely made me very emotional, it has to be Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready for the emotional gut punch that this book was about to deliver to me. This book is just such an interesting mix of like wholesome, sweet romance going on, and then you also have just the trauma that these 2 main characters have gone through in their lives. And that mix really did get to me. There was one specific scene in this book that I'm thinking of that my eyes were watering. I wouldn't say I was crying, but like there was some water in my eyes. But on a happier note, the next question is, what is a book that made you happy? And for this one, I'm going to be choosing Equal Rights by Terry Pratchett. I said I was going to start Discworld, and I did. I did start it, but I only read the 1 book, and I haven't read any more of them yet. I made it halfway through. What's the second one called? For the life of me, I cannot remember the book that I'm like halfway through because I don't have a copy of it anymore because I borrowed it from the library, but like I'm halfway through this one. Yeah. And I just kind of forgot about it. We kind of went into summer and I was like, I really don't want high fantasy right now, but I definitely have plans to get back into Discworld. I want to pick whatever this book is that I put on the screen back up and actually finish it. But I did finish Equal Rights, which is the first book in the kind of witches series that is a part of Discworld. And this book was such a delight. It was so fun. I just absolutely love Terry Pratchett's writing. I feel like it's so witty and funny. And this is one of the few books that has made me laugh out loud so many times. It's just so enjoyable, and I really, now that I'm thinking about it, I really want to get back into Discworld, so maybe I will pick up that other one and finish it sooner than I thought. The next question is, what is the best book to movie adaptation that you've seen this year? I don't think I've seen a ton of them, but the only book that I've really read that has an adaptation this year is Kiki's Delivery Service by Aiko Kodono. For a long time, I didn't even know that Kiki's Delivery Service was based on a book, but as soon as I figured that out, I was like, obviously I have to read it, and it was so much fun. Such a fun middle grade. If you like witchy books, I'd recommend. The next question is, what are some of the most beautiful books that you have acquired this year? And I do have a couple that I've already talked about and one that I have not. The 2 that I've already talked about are obviously Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands, because this is so beautiful and I will never stop talking about it. And then also Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. I decided to buy the Kickstarter edition of this book because I found it for a good deal on the used section of Amazon, and I was like, well, I'm not gonna pass this up. And then when I read it and I loved it, I was like, yay, I made a good choice on that one. But it's just so, oh, it's so beautiful. I love the pink and blue, and then also on the inside that kind of carries through. Also, there are stunning illustrations in this book. This is the one that I always like to show. It's beautiful. And then the other one that I want to talk about is an edition of one of my favorite classics that I have been wanting to buy for years at this point, and I'm so glad that I finally did. And it is this beautiful edition of Dracula. Look at it. It's like velvety feeling. It's got bat sprayed edges. It also has artwork done by Edward Gorey, who is one of my favorite spooky illustrators. Like, all of his art is just so stunning. Look at these end papers. This is probably my #1 favorite book that I've bought this year, just because any edition of Dracula I need to acquire. And then the last question is, what are some books that you still need to read before the end of the year? Honestly, I could probably pull off like 30 books from my shelves that I still want to read before the end of the year, but I'm not gonna do that. So I decided to only choose 4. 3 of these books are actually for very specific videos that I want to film, which I'm so excited about. I'm not gonna tell you what videos they are. Need to keep a little element of surprise, but let me just go through them. The first one actually isn't for a video. This is just on my 2024 TBR, and I really want to read it. And that is Days of Blood and Starlight by Laini Taylor. I read the first book in this series back in November, and I've been wanting to continue this series ever since. I just haven't gotten around to it, so I definitely want to pick this one up Maybe also in November. For some reason, this series kind of gives me November vibes, you know? Then, I think I talked about this a couple times last year, and I know I've put this on many a TBR, but I still really want to read Circe by Madeline Miller. I've been wanting to read either of Madeline Miller's like really popular books for quite a while, but I think Circe is a little bit more up my alley. I just need to read this. It's just honestly kind of hard to get myself to do it, even though I feel like I'm really gonna like it, so need to get to this. Then I have Shady Hollow by Juno Black. I'm so excited about this one just because it sounds so cute. They're like anthropomorphic animals going around solving a murder mystery. Yeah, it sounds perfect. And then this last book is something that is definitely out of my comfort zone, but I'm so excited for the video that I have planned for this. And that is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. I know this isn't gonna be a fun read, but like the video that I'm planning for it, I think is gonna be fun to film. But I'm pretty sure this book does very closely kind of mimic Sylvia Plath's life. And it's just a book that I've been wanting to read for a really long time, so I feel like it's gonna be an interesting one. So I absolutely love doing the mid-year book freakout tag. I feel like it's just such a way to kind of reflect on the first 6 months of the year, see how things are going, kind of catch up with you guys on how things are going, that kind of thing. And it also makes me really excited for the second half of the year. The second half of the year is always my favorite part of the year because we are going into fall. We are going to be reading some spooky books. I'm gonna be reading some atmospheric books for like late fall, early winter. I just feel like I love reading in the fall. Like that's my favorite time to read. So I literally cannot wait for that. But obviously before we get to that, we needed to reflect on the first half of the year. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I love doing this tag. It's like one of my favorite tags to do aside from like the end of year tag, but this is probably my favorite. Obviously, I would love to know down below any of your guys' answers to these questions. I think that could be really fun, so if you want to drop them down below, I'd love to read them. Also, before we go, I would like to thank everybody over on my Patreon. If you're ever looking for more content from me, that is always linked down below. We do some fun stuff over there. I do extra videos, journaling content. We do a readathon. We're doing one in July, which is gonna be really fun. And we do a monthly buddy read, and in July, we're going to be reading A Novel Love Story by Ashley Poston, which, as I said earlier, I can't wait for. But with that, I'm going to let you guys go. Thank you again so much for watching. I hope you're all having an amazing Monday or whatever day it is that you're watching this video, and I will see you all in my next one.